Have you ever been flipping through an old photo album or seen a movie from the 70s and just had this thought, wow, everyone was so thin? It's a really striking thing you notice, and it sets up this big mystery. We're going to get into the real reason why, and I'll tell you right now, it has almost nothing to do with what you've probably been told. And we're not talking about the kind of thin you get from hours in the gym and meticulously counting calories. No, this was different. It was just a natural, almost effortless leanness that was the norm for most people. So if it wasn't about diet fads or crazy workout plans, what in the world was going on? Well, the answer shows just how much our world has been completely redesigned around us, almost without us noticing. You know, it's so easy to look back and think, oh, people back then just had more willpower, right? That they were tougher, more disciplined than we are. But the real story here, the one we're digging into, it isn't about personal failure. It's all about the environment. They were living in a completely different world, one that was almost designed by default to keep them lean. Okay, so let's start with the biggest change of all, the food landscape, and specifically how food just wasn't everywhere, all the time, like it is for us today. I want you to just pause for a second and really try to imagine that. Imagine a world where your phone isn't buzzing with food delivery notifications, a world with no vending machine in the break room, no convenience store on every single corner, and no ads for snacks following you around the internet. That quieter, less tempting world, that was just everyday life in the 1970s. And you can see the complete reversal right here. Back in the 70s, food was something that happened at mealtimes. It was an event. But today, our environment is like this giant machine, perfectly engineered to make us eat all the time. It's there 24/7, it's marketed to us nonstop, and it's literally designed to be addictive. Back then, your own hunger told you when to eat. Today, it's the world around you. And the food itself, it was just different. Supermarkets weren't these endless aisles of hyper-processed, ready-to-eat meals. You bought raw ingredients, vegetables, meat, and you actually had to cook. And for most people, this wasn't some trendy lifestyle choice, it was the only option. That simple act of having to prepare a meal from scratch, that was a powerful, natural barrier against just mindlessly eating. Oh, and this perfectly illustrates the liquid calorie trap we live in. In the 70s, what did you drink? Water, tea, milk? A soda was a special, occasional treat. But today, sugar is like a stowaway in almost everything we drink, from those giant soft drinks to juices that are marketed as healthy. This constant, invisible flood of sugar just wasn't a part of their daily life. So the food environment was totally different. But that's really only half of the story. Let's move on, because the other half is all about how much people moved without ever thinking about it as exercise. Just think about your own day for a second. How much of it is spent sitting? You're at a desk, you're in a car, you're on the couch. Now, let's contrast that with a normal day in the 1970s, where life itself was basically a form of constant low-level physical activity. I mean, kids walked or they biked to school. You mowed the lawn with a push mower that you actually had to push. You got up off the couch to change one of the maybe 3 channels on the TV. You physically went to stores to buy things because, well, there was no other way. Every single one of these little tasks required physical effort. And here's the absolute key. Nobody called this a workout. Nobody scheduled it in their calendar. It was just living. This constant stream of what we call incidental movement burned thousands of extra calories every single week, a calorie burn that has been systematically engineered right out of our modern world. Okay, on to our third section. So we've covered the what, the food and the movement. Now let's get into the how, the cultural habits and the rhythms of eating, which have been completely rewritten. The whole rhythm of eating was different. In the 70s, you ate 3 square meals a day. That was it. This idea of constant snacking, of the fridge being an all-day buffet, that just wasn't a thing. If you got hungry between meals, you just waited for the next meal. Imagine that. And where people ate was a huge factor. Going out to eat was a genuine treat, for a birthday or an anniversary. Today, the first question is so often, what should we order in? But back then, the question was, what are we going to cook? And that meant you had almost total control over your ingredients, how it was cooked, and maybe most importantly, the portion sizes. And speaking of portion sizes, this is maybe one of the most shocking changes. They haven't just gotten bigger, they have absolutely exploded. A fast food burger was about half the size of what's standard today. A soft drink came in a small glass bottle, not a giant bucket. The phrase supersize it would have sounded like something from a science fiction movie. This really gets to a huge shift in our whole mindset around food. In the 1970s, the goal of a meal was to feel satisfied, just not hunger anymore. But today, the goal, whether we say it out loud or not, is often to feel stuffed. We've gone from eating for fuel to eating for entertainment. So, let's tie all of this together. Because when you see how every single one of these pressures from the environment has changed, you finally understand why staying at a healthy weight today takes so much conscious effort. It's pretty powerful when you see it all laid out like this, isn't it? Every single factor that naturally kept people lean in the 70s has been completely flipped on its head. We went from having limited food to food being everywhere. From constant movement to constant sitting. From modest portions to supersized everything. And from structured meals to an all-day snack fest. This quote just says it all, doesn't it? In the 1970s, being lean was often the default outcome of just living a normal life. But today, for so many of us, it requires a conscious, daily fight against an environment that is actively pushing us in the other direction. So if you take away one single thing from all this, let it be this. This is not about a collective failure of willpower. People today are not weaker or less disciplined. You are just trying to navigate a world that is infinitely more challenging. You're not playing the same game your parents or grandparents did. The rules, the game board, all the pieces, everything has changed. And that kind of leaves me with a final thought for you to chew on. Looking back at this complete transformation of our world, what was the one change that surprised you the most? And do you think it's even possible for us to get back some of those older, simpler habits in the middle of our crazy modern lives? It's a really interesting and I think important question to ask ourselves.